All right, I want to get more insight on that story now, especially around the legalities relating to marriage. Seetal Mitha is an attorney at Van Deventer and Van Deventer Incorporated. She joins us here in Johannesburg via Zoom. Seetal, thanks very much indeed for your time. So Queen Sibongile Dlamini-Zulu claims she's the legally wedded wife who should inherit 50% of the late king's estate. How strong of an argument does she have if indeed she's the only wife married in a civil marriage?
Thanks, Darren, for this opportunity. Thanks for having me. Firstly, I think it's quite important to understand a civil marriage versus a customary marriage. I think in a diverse society like South Africa, relationships between people can take various forms. You're either married in community of property or out of community of property. Our default position here in South Africa is in community of property. So I think if Dlamini-Zulu can prove that she is married in terms of civil law, and as she's alleging, married in community of property, it in essence means that she is entitled to a 50% share. Just to touch on what in community of property means is that everything that the couple owns prior to entering into the marriage and during the duration of the marriage, be it assets and liabilities, it all forms part of the joint estate. So in the event that either spouse passes on or in the event that they get divorced, that joint estate gets divided into half. So if one looks at Dlamini-Zulu's situation and what she alleges, that she's entitled to 50%, and if she can prove that she's married in terms of civil law, then she is, in my opinion, she's entitled to the 50%. If one considers customary marriages, previously customary marriages did not receive the recognition that it deserved. With the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act 1998 and the enactment of that legislation, it has fundamentally changed the laws regarding marriages in South Africa. If one looks at the abolition of marital power and the equalization of the statuses of the spouses and their capacity, is one of the utmost, I think, important changes to a traditional patriarchal nature of a customary marriage. So it will be very interesting to see what the outcome is if Dlamini-Zulu can prove that she's married in terms of civil law and in community of property.
And then if I can come in there, I mean, are there, having said what you said, are there any cultural arguments that can be advanced in defense of other marriages?
Yeah, so if we look at the 5 customary marriages, you know, there's various requirements that one would have to fulfill if we consider customary marriages. Because customary marriages are comprised of a series of principles that are derived from practice and traditions. So these practices have become part of our law and are now deemed necessary by the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act. So there are certain requirements that need to be fulfilled. So if it is that the 5 customary marriages are valid, the position is that those spouses are also deemed to be married in community of property, because that is the position. If one looks at Section 7 of the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act, it specifically states that if a person is a spouse in more than one customary marriage, these spouses will have joint and equal powers, as well as the control and management over the marital property. So if it is that the customary marriages aren't nullified, those 5 spouses are also entitled to an equal share. So it's a very interesting topic to, you know, and it will also be interesting to see what the court decides, because, well, if it is that the civil marriage is standing, Dlamini-Zulu is entitled to a 50% share, and in terms of our civil law, the customary marriages are deemed void.
Seetal, there's another matter before the court. and that's the application by Princess Ntando Yenkosi and Princess Ntobizo Sutu for the late King's will to be declared invalid, now claiming that his signature was forged. How difficult can this claim be to prove?
Well, it would all rely on expert testimony. Simply put, one would look at whether it is indeed the signature of the deceased. A lot relies on the evidence that's going to be led, so it will be interesting to see how the parties do, well, what evidence they might lead to prove that it is a forged will.
And then the big one, the fight for the throne. I mean, King Mr. Zulu against his prince brother, Semakade. Is this something that the courts can entertain, considering that several cultural rites have been performed and King Mr. Zulu is said to have been chosen through a will as a successor? How do you see that panning out?
Devan, and that's very interesting because traditionally speaking, it varies amongst the different communities. So I do not envy the court on having to make that decision because there's not a principle set in stone to make a decision like that.
All right, I think we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. That was the attorney from Van Deventer and Van Deventer Incorporated, Seetal Mitha. Thanks indeed for your insights on that one.